Hi ratepayers, it's Eric Lippman of Utility Reform Now with yet another horror story and an explanatory video about how Minnesota utility ratepayers are poorly served by the existing utility regulation system. And so in the prior videos, if you've been watching on this channel, I've described how GMG, a small Minnesota natural gas utility with 11,000 customers and 25 employees, had to bear $250,000, $250,000 worth of expenses in order to file its application and get that application approved to raise some rates, such that 10% of the rate increase that was saddled on to its customers within its service territory was that due to the government officials involved in the process. Imagine filing a permit, admittedly a sophisticated one, but one that required $250,000 worth of staff costs in order to process. For me, that's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. That's an outrageous bill. It's a shameful bill in order to answer what I've argued in a prior video is essentially 4 key questions in the rate-making process. Will the rates that were proposed by the utility result in adequate and reliable service? That's number 1. Are the rates reimbursing those things which the financial and economic requirements of the utility ordinarily have? That's 2. Does the utility need to construct facilities or obtain energy supplies? That's 3. And does its plan for utility rates in its service area avoid unnecessary duplication of costs? That's 4. The question is, do we need $250,000 in order to answer those admittedly complicated, but essentially 4 binary questions? It's either yes or no. Yes or no. Yes or no. Pretty straightforward. And so again, to be faced with a bill like that, I think is outrageous. And I think a check on that thinking is, what if the rules for the Minnesota PUC and how it recovers its costs were reversed? What if it had to go through a similar process before sending on that $250,000 bill to you? It had to face the same kind of inquiries and the same kind of questions that a rate-regulated public utility does in Minnesota. What would happen if there was a karmic shift? Well, I thought about that, and what utilities tend to do, because facing the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission is a very risky enterprise. Again, they're mayflies. They don't have clear rules. You're not quite sure whether you're going to get your rate increase approved. So what utilities have done, and with full cooperation of the Commission, of course, is integrated resource planning. Utilities that are rate regulated in Minnesota set out a 20-year plan. We plan to buy these kind of materials for transmission lines. We want to put in a natural gas turbine to develop electricity. We want to run a pipeline along this with large mains and infrastructure. And we're going to plan that out because, why? There's regulatory risk, particularly with these folks. And so the utilities present a plan, want the Commission to buy in and vote on the plan, only because when they go out and undertake the plan, they don't want a later commission saying, no, I think that's unreasonable. If I were the CEO of your company, I wouldn't have done that, after they've incurred all of those costs. They don't want to face a large disallowance of future costs, and so they submit the plan in advance. This is what we're going to do. Okay by you? Again, a reasonable approach and one that helps reduce risk. That's great. But what if the Commission had to answer the same kind of questions? In the integrated resource planning operation, there are 2 key questions that the utility wants to address and answer in their plan for the future. Does our plan to deliver utility service in this way, with this material, along this timeline, represent the lowest overall cost of providing the service? Not the lowest possible cost, the lowest true cost. It includes reasonable costs for safety, for accessibility, reliability, responsiveness, all of the things that a public utility would ordinarily do, just not gouge us. The lowest reasonable overall cost, the true cost. And is it enough that there are low risks that the entire system will fail? This will probably look a lot like our goalposts. We don't want them too high, but we don't want to underfund a public utility, steal their seed corn, rob them of the oxygen that they need to breathe and the resources that they need to operate, because the entire system might fail, and that will leave ratepayers and folks who depend upon electricity and natural gas service high and dry. We don't want that to happen. So the utilities answer these questions. What if we put the bill that was incurred by government officials in the GMG case to this same test? Do we really think that $250,000 to essentially answer 4 key questions is the lowest overall cost? I would suggest to you that no one on the planet believes that. That's not the lowest overall cost. I am certain, absolutely certain, that we can do better than how GMG was treated when it went before the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission. Also, is the rate-making process the lowest risk for system failure? Absolutely not. Again, you'll recall in a couple videos back, GMG, rather than face the ratepayers the rate regulators in St. Paul, rather than go before the Public Utilities Commission, it seriously considered filing for bankruptcy. It seriously considered going out of business or restructuring so that it could avoid its creditors. That's system failure. It's not a low risk. It's an actual risk that is happening because of the way the MPUC operates day after day, year after year. The small utility, the 25-person utility, the utility that's delivering service to areas that are not served by any other rate-regulated utility, is at risk of failure because of the bureaucratic red tape it's subject to by the PUC. So, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the most effective of them all? It ain't the MPUC. If you want to change, if you want to help initiate the karmic change so that MPUC's operations look a lot more like the utilities that they regulate in its cost controls, well, I hope that you'll like, follow, and subscribe at utilityreformnow.com. utilityreformnow.com.